she picked her husband up from jail, hoping their marriage could be saved. Later that day, he killed her. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Relationship Renegade. I'm your host, Dr. Jameson Mercier, licensed clinical social worker and doctor of marriage and family therapy. I hope you are doing well wherever you are, whatever it is you're doing, whomever you're doing it with. Yeah. We're continuing our series this month as we talk about unsolicited advice. And I gotta say that this episode for today, it took a turn that I was not anticipating. I already had we had our topics lined up. We've had them lined up for months, actually. As you can tell, we've actually been doing them through with our weekend editions. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I encourage you to go back and check them out. The series, all the episodes this month have been about unsolicited advice for different people, different demographics. And in preparation, so we did these in advance, but this week I came across an article in the newspaper, our local paper here in South Florida. And it really caused me to stop and pause a bit. And there was no way that I could just continue the series without addressing this. And I'm talking about solicited advice as it relates to abuse and domestic violence. So in the paper this week, specifically the Sun Sentinel, there was a story about a wife whose husband took her life. And while this is unfortunately an occurrence that is all too common, just this story really stopped me in my tracks. I'll link the story in the show notes so you can read it. But it starts by saying she picked her husband up from jail, hoping their marriage could be saved. Later that day, he killed her. Yeah, and if that doesn't stop you in your tracks, I don't know what will. And it's not my job to, talk to your conscience, but this spoke to mine. And it's the kind of thing that really pisses me off. And I'll do my best to, not fly off the rails. But I say, so she picked her husband up from jail, hoping their marriage could be saved. Later that day, he killed her. That really, really, really bugs me. And so we have to talk about domestic violence. And I know we've heard it over and over again. But we're going to talk about it because apparently either the message isn't getting through, one, and two, maybe there are other people who are telling people in these types of situations that they should stay with their husband or their wife, for that matter. Let me add that piece. While we're talking about a woman whose husband killed her, there are men also being abused and remaining in these abusive relationships. So let me just put that out there now. This is not just a one-sided thing. And And so while I was just kind of reading and preparing and thinking over what I know and trying to verify, if I'm just sitting here, in my own thoughts, I came across a song that came out in 1969. Yeah. The song is called Stand By Your Man. And it was written by Tammy Wynette. And some of you may be blessed enough to know the song. And those of you who don't, it's okay. You can look it up on Google. Tammy Wynette, Stand By Your Man. And that is really where we start today's episode in terms of unsolicited advice. We tell people in abusive relationships to stand by your man, stand by your woman. And on the surface, it sounds like, very solid advice. And even the song by Tammy Wynette, she essentially sings to that, no matter what, stick with them. And listen, that's all fine and dandy if your husband or your wife is doing, dumb shit like not putting the toilet seat down. That is not cool if he or she is threatening your life. I don't know how else to say it, how more plain I can say it, right? So this dude in this paper, he was in jail for domestic violence, and not domestic violence for, not abusing anyone else but his wife. Okay? So he's in jail. She called to file the report. And then when he is released, she goes to pick him up. She's the one. She's the one who picked him up. In the news article, it says that in the past he'd hit her in the face and tried to blow up her car. And so I just, I don't ever blame victims. I just don't. I'm not in the practice of blaming victims. I do understand that their decisions do not happen in a vacuum. And so, just like we've established this whole month, there are people, I'm going to assume, who've given her advice. Perhaps directly or indirectly, she's got it in her mind that she needs to stand by her man. Give him another chance, which is something else we'll get into. But after all of that, she stands by him. She filed for a restraining order, and yet here she is going back to get him. If you are telling people to stand by their man or stand by their woman, I'm really going to ask you to stop. Right? I'm going to ask you to just really shut the hell up. Because people who are in abusive situations, who remain in abusive situations and, consistently, right? They persist in these domestic violence type relationships. They are very sensitive to outside influences and advice. But people who've been abused do not process information like someone who's not been abused. And I'm trying to say this as, I guess, PC as possible, but there's a different way of rationalizing when you are in an abusive relationship. From the outside, you're looking in, and it may seem like no big deal to you, but there's a lot going on inside. And so when you tell someone to simply stand by your man, no matter what, and not, again, like I said, not for small things, right? Socks everywhere, underwear on the floor, towel on the bathroom floor. We're talking about stand by your man even though he tried to kill you. And that is especially dangerous because statistically speaking, if you're in an abusive relationship and he or she has tried to kill you and were unsuccessful, they will try again. And the more times people try to do something, the more times they try, the better they get at succeeding, right? The more likely it is that they will succeed. And so that is essentially what happened to this lady here. The day she picked him up from jail, that was the day he killed her. So stand by your man. Maybe there's a place for that. I don't know where it is. I mean, I'm sure there is, right? But it doesn't always apply. Okay, so that's the first bit of advice. I'm going to encourage you, if you're doing it, to just drop it. Number 2, give him another chance. Now, this is again, this is interesting because there are times when people will say, well, hey, come on, he or she messed up, give him another chance. He or she seems very remorseful, give him another chance, right? You didn't get married to be divorced. You've heard all of that. If you love him, forgive him. And that one right there is really cruel. That really, it's cruel. If you love him or her, okay, again, him or her, forgive him. Because what that does is that one is really guilt tripping the person. Yeah. That's what you're doing. When you tell someone, if you love him, forgive him, you're guilt tripping them, and you're just messing with their emotions. You've been there. You've been there before, either on the receiving end or giving. When someone says to you, hey, if you really cared about me, you would blank. Yeah. And that doesn't feel good because you want to do one thing, but then you feel like, well, damn, I actually do love this person or care about this person. So maybe that's what I should be doing. Maybe I want to leave. Maybe I no longer want to be in this situation. But they're right. I do love him. And so therefore, because I love him, I have to stay. No, you do not have to stay. Right? The fact of the matter is, there are many people who are loved, but they just are not ready to be in a relationship. Okay, I'll tell you, just think about that, right? You may have loved someone, in love with them, love them, lusting, infatuation, whatever it is, but you're not going to be with them because either they don't deserve your love. Hello. They may just not deserve your love, whether that's right now, whether that's ever, whether this is a season where they just kind of need to go be by themselves. But no, you don't tell someone you have to stay with them because you love them. Because there's more to it than that. It ain't just about love.
Hi, we are the Mercier kids. Like what you hear so far?
Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe now.
This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
In previous seasons, we've talked about love just not being enough. And I know we're taught that and we're told that, and there's songs, all you need is love. That's BS, guys. That is a ton of BS. And by extension, when we say, if you love him, forgive him, then there's also, you didn't get married to be divorced. Well, no, duh. Yeah, no shit. We know that. Nobody got married so that they could turn around and be divorced. But that happens. It happens. The honest fact is that a lot of relationships end in divorce or separation. Yeah. And I'm not a fan of either, but I understand there's a place, right? There's a place for them. I'm not a fan of, medications as a go-to. No, but I understand sometimes some people have some conditions that require some major interventions. Okay? So it isn't that once you're in, and there's no way out or you have no alternatives. That's the kind of advice that ends up, that gets people hurt unnecessarily, because there's no reason why anyone should lose their lives because they stayed or at the hands of someone who they claim to love or claims to love them. Okay? No way. Never should that happen. All right, so don't tell people, hey, you love him, you got to forgive him. You love her. I know she cut you, but, you love her. Don't you? Right? Don't you love him? And they add the extra sauce, right? Don't you? And there's even a whole group of people. This is the really messed up part. The religious group, right? The Bible thumpers, the holy rollers and Bible thumpers. God hates divorce. Yeah, you're right. He does. But he also didn't put you here to have some idiot kill you. And so what then? What do you do then? All right. So we got to stop pretending like we know, like that. Just stop pretending that like we know. Keep some of this advice to ourselves. Let me move on. I feel like I'm rambling. Third bit of advice, and this is connected to the last one we just mentioned. He's just a man. He's just a man. Okay, so what does that mean? Just tell me, what does that mean? I know what I think people mean when they say stuff like that. Or he's only human. She's only human. Nobody's perfect. Okay. Yes. But what does that mean? Right? He's just a man. Does that mean we ought to not expect anything? That mean we should accept that, violence and anger is part of being a man? Yeah, let's just not get me going down that road with some of these really fucked up ideas about manhood and what it means and masculinity. Okay? Because if that's really the standard, okay, if that is the bar for manhood, for men, right? Accepting the fact that, hey, That's a man. Men are men. They lose their temper. They lose their temper. And, they'll fly off the handle sometimes, or he was drunk. Then as a society, we are setting ourselves up for this crap. We just are making it okay for crap like this to happen over and over and over again. And then we sit around and we see articles like this and we say things like, oh, that is so sad. Oh, man, she didn't have to go like that. Well, no duh. No duh. But, if you buy into some of these ideas and these really twisted and sick ideas about, relationships and advice, then you are by extension complicit. You are contributing to this, right? When you dish out just these crazy ideas about relationships and what's okay and not okay, you're doing it. You are partly responsible. What you ought to do is just confront it, okay? Not be silent about it. And I understand not everyone's going to jump on the soapbox and preach, and, not everyone's going to use their social media platforms for stuff like this. And that's fine. But then just don't say anything. If you're not going to fight against it, don't say shit that will be contributing to it, right? Don't say this kind of stuff that makes you complicit. Because that's really what this does. And I'll tell you one other thing, right? This doesn't just start with men who are 50 years old, because that's roughly the age of this guy. This guy was grown, like old grown man, grown and on his own. But we start this thing with young boys too, right? Boys will be boys. Oh, he's just a boy. That's what they do. Yeah, no, they don't. They do what they are taught. We do what we are allowed to do, whether we're 5 or 50. Okay, that's just a fact. You get what you accept, right? What you demand, you get. Because I'll tell you right now, at my age, there are some things I don't do just because Herdina's like, nah, partner, that ain't gonna fly up in here. Now, I'm not talking about smacking her around or anything. That's hell no way. But maybe, I don't know, I might want to mount a TV in the bathroom, on the ceiling, in the shower. I don't know, crazy ideas. Maybe I may want to hang with the guys a little longer, a little late. Maybe don't come home. Maybe I want to speak a certain way in my house or do certain things. And she's like, bro, that ain't going to work. What is that? Right? So she doesn't accept certain things. And so because I love her, because I choose to be with her, I'm like, you know what? That's cool. I don't need to do that. I don't got to do that here, if at all. Okay? And along the same vein with my son, no, this crap about their boys being boys, no. You can learn some things. You can acquire some skills and some self-control. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. You can learn to manage your emotions without just putting your hands on somebody else. Okay, in the article, which do go and read it if you feel so moved. The link will be in the show notes. His attorney talks about traumas and mental health issues, and for some people that may complicate it, and I get that. However, in the fact still remains, that is still not an excuse to put your hands on someone and ultimately take their life. Because not everyone with a mental illness or emotional issues is going around killing people or beating people or smacking their wives or their husbands around. That's not like a default thing, right? It's not like, oh, he's got, anxiety and depression, therefore, he kills women. That's BS. It's like, oh, he had a rough childhood, so therefore, yeah, he smacks his girlfriend around. That's the thing. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. There are plenty of people, men and women, with emotional issues who are not abusing people. Right? So let's try again, right? Let's try to come up with something else. And I get the system. I get the way it's set up. You're entitled to use whatever defense that you can find. But let's be real, people. Let's really take a hard look. Okay? It's not a thing. Because if that's a thing, then we go back to saying, hey, he's just a man. He's just a boy. She grew up with no daddy, so that's what she does. Yeah, if that's the world we live in, then you know what? I need to get off this planet. If that's the society that we are walking around in, then it's time for me to just, sell all my crap and move out into the mountains. Me and the dogs and the trees. Because that is not cool. And it's just all too often these stories. There's too many of them. One is too many. And every time you read about one, it reminds you of another and another. There are a bunch of them. I mean, years ago, there was another one that really struck us hard. Linda Renee Innocent. We'll never forget her. And, we know people who knew her personally. She was found in her car at the airport, dead. And when I say in her car, I'm talking about in her trunk. There were other stories where people killed their whole families, right? And ran off, fled the country. Yeah. And so, yeah, people have issues, but if and again, I understand not everyone is complicit in this, and you may be like, Jameson, you're just crazy. Yeah, I may be a little crazy. I'm also pissed because this should not happen. And so if you're giving out this crappy advice, please just stop. Just stop. Keep it to yourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been our show. Like I said, I will post the article. It's in the Sun Sentinel. The link will be in the show notes. Check it out. My heart goes out to this family, to everyone affected by this. Ultimately, the guy, he was convicted, and he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. For killing this lady. But that's just, it shouldn't have had to go down that way. It never has to. But listen, that's our show. If you know anybody who needs to hear this, just let them know. If you are someone who needs to hear this, who are in a similar situation, reach out. There are services, there are people, there are agencies, there are people you can reach out to. And I encourage you, okay, please do your best to protect yourself. Whether you love someone or not, it should not have to cost you your life. Thank you for checking out this episode. Let us know what you think. Reach out to us in the show notes, the comments. Hit me up on Instagram. Check us out. Relationship Renegade Podcast. Dr. Jameson Mercier. All over Instagram, Facebook. check out the website, mercierwellness.com. And please do take care of yourself. And if you've not heard it today, just need to know that I appreciate you and I love you. Talk to you next time. Bye now.